Her true story from Indiana: my daughter-in-law fed me dog food. Thinking I wouldn't notice, my name is Evelyn. I am 78 years old, and I live or used to live in a small town in Indiana. This is not a story I ever thought I would tell, but silence has teeth, and mine is chewed through enough years. So let me begin with the night. Everything changed with a spoon and a scent. I'll never forget. It was a Thursday evening. The sky outside was the color of old bruises, gray tinged with purple. I sat at the end of a long, glossy dining table that wasn't mine. The silverware was set too perfectly, the chairs too stiff, the silence too loud. My son Daniel was still at work only. Melissa, his wife, and I were home, and Lucky, their Cocker Spaniel, who somehow had more freedom in this house than I did. Melissa placed a small porcelain bowl in front of me, the kind you might use for soup or dessert. It was steaming a thick brown stew, its surface bubbling like mud. She didn't say what it was. She didn't have to. I lifted the spoon slowly, cautiously, and brought it to my lips. I've eaten simple meals my whole life. I know the taste of budget meats, of canned beans, of overcooked rice. I know struggle. But this had a scent that didn't belong in any kitchen. It was sweet and metallic, grainy on the tongue. I held the spoon in my mouth for just a moment before setting it down gently. "Moni," I said more to myself than to her. Melissa turned from the sink, her dish towel in hand, and let out a short, sharp laugh, the kind that cuts. "You're sharp, aren't you?" "Mama Evelyn," she said, voice dipped in syrup. "You're too sensitive, Mom. It's no different than," came the line, the one that would etch itself into the inside of my skull like a carving on old stone. Mom lives off us, so eating the same as Lucky is also equal. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I simply looked down at the bowl again, then across the table where Li's bowl, ceramic bone-shaped, was half dull of the same brown mush Melissa didn't sit to eat with me. She never did. She always claimed she'd already eaten or that she was on some kind of cleanse. But I noticed how she cooked only when Daniel wasn't home. Meals that were hot but heartless. Always just enough to keep me from complaining. Never enough to feel full. I had moved in with them 3 months earlier after a fall that left me with a cracked hip and a shaking hand. I needed help, or at least that's what my doctor said. Daniel offered, insisted even that I come stay with them just for a while. Melissa had smiled, agreed, said they'd make it work. I should have known from that first smile, too wide, too white, that something inside her was rotten, but I said yes because I didn't want to be alone in that house anymore, not since Harold passed that first night. Melissa gave me the guest room, barely big enough for the twin bed and the dresser I brought from home. No curtains, no pictures, no warmth, just walls and the faint smell of bleach. She smiled again as she showed me in. "It's not much," she said, "but it's better than a nursing home." Right? I wanted to believe she meant well, even when she forgot to pick up my medication, even when she told her friends I was a little off and probably didn't remember much, even when she started locking the fridge at night. But that dinner, that was different. I sat there for another minute, staring at the bowl. I picked up the spoon again and stirred the stew slowly, watching how it clung to the silver like glue. I glanced over at Lucky. He licked his lips, wagging his tail. Eager for more, Melissa leaned on the counter, checking her phone. "Eat up, Mama Evelyn," she said without looking. "It's organic." "None?" I forced a smile. Of course, and I did eat one bite too, enough to keep her from noticing the rest would be flushed away later, buried under tissues in the trash. I knew better than to fight in her arena under her rules without a plan. After dinner, I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hand was shaking again, but not from age, this time from something colder, something older, something I hadn't felt since I was a girl that night. I didn't sleep. I listened to the click of her phone as she texted in the kitchen, the thump of Li's paws on the hardwood, the low hum of the refrigerator still locked, and when the house was finally still, I tiptoed out in my socks, clutching my phone with both hands. In the trash bin under the sink, I found what I was looking for. A torn open cardboard case marked Dog Gourmet Meals. Bulk order, under it, empty cans, label peeled, but one still intact. Oh, barcodey. A name I didn't recognize. I didn't take the can. I took a photo. I went back to bed and I didn't cry. Not that night. I had a plan. I laughed with her, just a soft chuckle, empty, but polite, the kind you give when you want to stay invisible. Melissa leaned her head back, clearly pleased with herself. The joke wasn't funny, but it wasn't meant to be. It was a test, and like all good tests, it revealed everything I needed to know that night as I wiped my mouth. with a paper napkin and stood slowly. She waved a hand without looking up from her phone. "Don't worry about the dishes. Mama Evelyn, we've got it covered. Go get your rest." I nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." I shuffled down the hallway slowly, letting my slippers drag against the floor just enough to make her believe I was tired, absent-minded. No threat to anyone. I opened my door with a creak and closed it just as loud. Then I waited 5 minutes. 10, I slipped back out once. Her laughter faded into the living room. Quiet as dust. I walked into the kitchen and pulled the trash bin from under the sink. The top layer was fresh paper towels, a tea bag, and avocado peel, but I dug gently beneath, and there it was, again, the cardboard box. I saw the night before, the branding was ridiculous. A gold-foiled font over fake wood grain. Background dog gourmet meals, all flavor and tucked inside the box, 4 empty cans. One still had the label intact. I didn't need to steal it. I just needed the barcode. I held my phone low and snapped the photo flash off. Sound muted. I took another, this time with Melissa's monogrammed dish towel in frame for good measure. I didn't feel fear, just a slow, steady heat under my ribs like an engine warming up back in my room. I plugged my phone in and opened the photo gallery. The can was clearly marked, not for human consumption. Ingredients listed things I couldn't pronounce. Meat byproducts, chemical preservatives, synthetic flavors. But what stood out most was the note beneath the ingredients intended for canine use only. Not suitable for elderly care or assisted living, that part hit like ice down my spine. I sat down, held the phone in both hands, and let the silence fill the room again. I was no stranger to humiliation. Life had fed it to me in doses, slow, persistent ones, but never like this. Not from inside my own family. Melissa had made it clear from day one that I was an inconvenience. She never said it aloud, not directly. But her eyes rolled when I asked for help with my pill box. Her sighs were sharp. When I took longer in the bathroom, she never made space for me on the couch. She never called me Mom. Only Mama Evelyn. Like a character in a play, she resented being cast in. I'd seen it before in neighbors, in church friends, and women like me. Widowed aging moved in with children, thinking it would bring comfort only to find themselves. Erased polite neglect at best, open cruelty at worst. But she'd made a mistake. She thought I was stupid. I smiled to myself in the dark. The next morning, I forgot my cane in the living room. Melissa rolled her eyes when I asked her to fetch it. I misplaced my keys and blamed Lucky. I repeated myself in casual conversations. "Did you say Thursday or Tuesday, dear?" I tilted my head. "I'm a bit fuzzy lately." Melissa ate it up. Her smugness grew like mold. "She's getting worse," I overheard. Her whisper to Daniel one night. When she thought I was asleep, she called the remote control, the telephone. "I don't know if we can keep this up. It's a lot." I took it as permission to forget to mumble to move slowly all the while. My eyes were sharp and my ears even sharper. I started keeping a journal again, not in a notebook. Too risky. I used the Notes app on my phone, password protected. Disguised under a title knit, Patterns for Church Bazaar there. I wrote everything Tuesday, 8. 12 p.m. leftovers from Lie's bowl poured into mine Wednesday 10:30. Aiming Melissa told Daniel, I was paranoid because I asked about where the bread was. Thursday 6:47 p.m. found another order confirmation email open on her tablet Pet Supply Deluxe. Recurring order took photo. Each entry felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, not revenge, not yet just proof because women like me, we don't get believed when we speak. We get called senile, dramatic, bitter, but no one argues with facts. One morning, Melissa made me breakfast oatmeal that tasted faintly of aluminum. She smiled as she set it down. "How is it today, Mama?" "Evelyn," she asked, toned saccharine. "Oh, it's lovely, dear," I replied. "Just like the kind we had in the army," she blinked. "You were in the army?" I smiled wider. "Oh no, I must be confusing it with something else. My memory. You know," she laughed. "Right. Happens. Then." She walked away, not noticing I hadn't taken a single bite that week. I ordered a backup phone, paid for it with my own bank account. An account she didn't know existed, had it delivered to the corner pharmacy under the name of an old friend. I picked it up when Melissa was out getting a facial. It was time to tell someone, and I knew exactly who. That night, I waited until she went to bed. Then I opened my hidden phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. 3 rings. "Hello." A young male voice answered. "Caleb," I said softly. "It's Grandma Evelyn." He paused. Grandma, everything okay? No, sweetheart, I whispered. Not exactly. There was a beat of silence. Then where are you with your Uncle Daniel and Melissa? Is something wrong? I took a breath, steadying my voice. She's feeding me dog food, Caleb, and she thinks I'm too old and too stupid to notice. By the time I ended the call with Caleb, my heart was still thudding, not with fear, but with focus. I hadn't heard his voice in nearly a year. Not since his graduation. He'd always been the quiet one at family dinners. Polite, but perceptive. The kind who watched before he spoke now. He was a second-year law student at Indiana University, and my last hope, I'm coming this weekend. He'd said before hanging up, don't tell anyone I called, don't do anything different, just wait. And I did, but I didn't sit idle that same night. I took out the photo of the barcode from the trash and uploaded it to my computer. I may be old, but I'm not helpless. 40 years of running a kitchen had taught me more than just recipes. It taught me how to research suppliers, how to verify labels, how to read between lines written by people who thought housewives were stupid. I entered the barcode into a lookup site and pressed search. The result came back instantly. Gourmet. Dog meals, chicken and peas. Bulk pack, 24 cans and waiting under the inn, not for human consumption. Pet use only contains organ meats. Bone meal artificial flavorings. I leaned back in my chair for a second. Everything inside me stilled. The room was too quiet. The air smelled faintly of citrus and bleach. Melissa had been cleaning earlier, or pretending to. I stared at the screen, willing myself not to feel the sting behind my eyes. Not out of pride, but because, if I let one tear fall, I knew more would follow. I had cooked every day of my adult life. My hands were marked by burns and calluses, memories of roasts, stews, and late-night birthday cakes. I'd fed a family through layoffs, through winter storms, through illness. I knew the weight of a meal made with love and the cruelty of a meal made to humiliate. And this wasn't just neglect. This was degradation. I saved the search result, then I went further. I looked up the supplier Pet Supply Deluxe. Come Public F-facing site. Melissa had an account I knew because I'd seen the tab open on her tablet. I clicked through her recent order history. She hadn't logged out there. It was recurring order, gourmet dog meals, chicken and peas, monthly, bulk subscription order. Date last Monday. Shipping address. My son's home, the home I'd helped pay the down payment for 20 years ago. I clicked on the invoice and read it line by line. She was spending more money feeding me dog food than it would cost to make a pot of real stew. That was what stopped me cold. It wasn't frugality, it wasn't ignorance, it was intentional. Melissa didn't want me cared for, she wanted me degraded. I closed the laptop gently as if I could muffle the noise of what I had just uncovered, but there was no quieting it now. The next morning I acted the same as always. Let her brew her cold tea and scroll Instagram in the kitchen. Let her pass me a bowl of something gray and say, Bon appetit, Mama Evelyn. I smiled, smells delicious. And I took one bite. Just one. She never noticed how I folded the rest into a napkin later and dropped it into my purse. I took it to the pharmacy down the street. A friend of mine, Marcy, worked there. She used to be a nurse before she semi-retired. Can you do me a favor? I asked her, unwrapping the napkin. Tell me if this is what I think it is. She frowned, leaned in. Where'd you get this? Melissa cooked it. Her face changed. Of Evelina, this smells like dog food. Need more than that. I need confirmation. She nodded slowly. Let me make some calls by evening. She'd gotten back to me. It's exactly what you think it is, she said. It's a high-protein canine meal, common with people who feed their dogs like royalty, but it's dangerous for human consumption, especially for someone your age. Too much sodium, too many preservatives. Evelyn, this isn't just wrong, it's illegal. I nodded. Good. Marcy blinked. Good, because I'm not done. Not yet. That night I called Caleb again, told him what I'd found, what Marcy had said. He was quiet for a long time on the other end. Grandma? He finally said. We can take this to court. I don't want a court, I said. Not yet. I want them to know what they've done. I want them to feel it. He understood, maybe better than I did. Then we need documentation, photos, records, and we need a moment when everyone's watching. I'll make sure they're all there, I said. He laughed softly. Of course you will. Friday came fast. Melissa was in high spirits. Daniel's parents are coming over for dinner this weekend, she said. You'll stay in your room. Okay, it's just easier that way. I smiled naturally. I spent that day gathering everything: screenshots, printouts, the barcode photo, Marcy's note. I tucked it all into a plain manila folder and sealed it with a paperclip. I labeled it Photos. Family Trip 1996. So no one would bother to open it early when Saturday arrived. So did the family: Daniel's sister, her husband, cousins, everyone. Melissa loved playing hostess. She wore a silk blouse and spritzed air freshener, like perfume. She made lemon chicken. Her one real recipe. Everyone oohed and awed, and when dinner began, I sat at the very end of the table, just like always, in the chair that didn't match with a napkin that was paper, not linen. I looked at the plate she gave me. Plain pasta, no sauce, and I smiled halfway through the meal. I tapped my spoon against my glass. Excuse me? I said, my voice quiet but clear. Everyone turned. Melissa froze. I brought a little photo album. I said, just something I found when organizing my things. Would you all mind if I shared? Daniel shrugged. Sure, Mom. Opened the folder, laid the photos on the table one by one. The barcode, the supplier's invoice, the ingredient list, Melissa's order history, Marcy's signed note, and finally the label. Not for human consumption. The silence was deafening. Melissa's mouth dropped open. Daniel's face drained of color. I sat back. Calm. Full. I've eaten worse in my life, I said, but never with less love. After the silence fell like a curtain over that dining room table, after the photos had all been laid bare like dirty laundry on the fine china, I didn't say another word. I just gathered my folder, stood up slowly, and walked back to my room. I didn't slam the door. No Need to Truth slams loud enough on its own that night. As I lay awake in my bed, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, slow and steady. Like my thoughts, I heard whispers down the hall. Daniel's voice frantic and low. Melissa's sharper defensive doors opened and closed. Footsteps stormed across floors that used to be mine. They didn't knock. I didn't expect them to at 347 A.M. I picked up my hidden phone, the one Melissa didn't know existed, and scrolled through my contacts. Aaron, IU. Law was saved near the top. Not Caleb this time. Not the quiet one. Aaron was the oldest of my grandchildren, a third-year law student at Indiana University. Bloomington sharp, headstrong, and fiercely protective of family, especially me. He used to come over every summer when he was little, and he always called me my best grandma, even though he had 3. I tapped Cole. He answered on the second. Ring, his voice groggy. Grandma Aaron, I said quietly. I need your help. He sat up instantly. I could hear it in the shift of his breath. What happened? So I told him about the bowl, the barcode, the dog food, the way Melissa smirked while I swallowed shame disguised as supper. I told him how Daniel had looked away, how the house I once helped pay for had turned into a silent prison. I told him everything. Aaron didn't interrupt once when I finished. He exhaled slowly. I'll handle this, Grandma. And he said, just let me handle it. I smiled. I trust you, Aaron, but I want it done my way. He paused. What's your way? Public, legal, and unforgettable. He chuckled like a true Southern matriarch. I may live in Indiana, I said, but I remember where I come from. The next morning, Aaron sent me a checklist, copies of bank statements showing shared expenses, photos of all relevant food labels and invoices, a signed statement from a medical professional confirming dietary harm, a witness letter from Marcy, video or audio evidence if possible. Build the foundation, he wrote. I'll bring the hammer. So I started gathering. Lisa didn't know I had access to the family printer. Didn't know I'd once taught high school business classes before I ever stepped into a marriage. She thought I was slow, forgetful. She didn't realize I'd been filing paperwork longer than she'd been alive. I printed every invoice, clipped every receipt I had. Records of my Social Security checks, records of the bills Daniel used to ask me to help pay. Just for a little while, Mom. I had screenshots from Melissa's pet food account captured before she finally figured out to log out of her devices, and I had the folder by Wednesday. I mailed it all in one envelope. Heavy, sealed, tight, addressed to Aaron's apartment in Bloomington. That night, I cooked for myself for the first time in weeks. I snuck out during Melissa's nap and bought a small rotisserie chicken from the corner store. I boiled rice chopped. Scallions made a little soy sauce drizzle like I used to. I even set the table for one. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Not just the taste, the dignity the next day. Aaron called. "I've got everything," he said, "and I've already spoken to one of my professors. He specializes in elder abuse and estate protection. He's going to advise us." "Good," I said, "because I'm ready." Aaron's voice dropped to a calmer, colder register, not angry, but focused. "Here's what we'll do." He said, "We'll call a family meeting. You'll be there, I'll be there, and so will they. We'll lay out everything just like in court. Let them see what it feels like when truth walks in the front door." I chuckled. "You sound like your grandfather. I sound like your student." He said, "You taught me better than anyone. We picked a date Saturday." Daniel and Melissa thought it was going to be another family dinner, a reconciliation after my little outburst, the week before they even tried to butter me up. Melissa knocked on my door Friday afternoon with a tray of cookies, store-bought overly sweet with a fake smile to match. "I know we got off on the wrong foot," she said. "It's just been stressful for all of us." I looked at the cookies, then at her, and for once I let silence answer. Saturday came. Aaron arrived wearing a pressed button-down and a tie. One of Harold's old ties I'd given him years ago. He kissed my cheek and whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. "Let's go feed the wolves." The family gathered around the table once more. Melissa poured wine. Daniel looked stiff. Everyone tried to pretend this was normal. Then Aaron stood. He reached into his satchel and pulled out the folder. Not mine. His. And from it, he began to read first the evidence invoices photos, proof of non-consumable dog food fed to a human. Then the testimonies. Marcy's letter, a preliminary medical statement, and bank records showing I had supported their household for months. Without acknowledgement, Melissa's face went pale. Daniel rubbed his temples, and Aaron's voice calm. And firm delivered the final blow. This is a textbook case of elder neglect, humiliation, and willful deception. If this goes to court, we have enough for a civil suit and, depending on the prosecutor, potentially criminal charges. Melissa stood suddenly. "You're threatening us." Aaron didn't flinch. "No," he said. "I'm informing you. Grandma's not alone. Not anymore. And neither was I." After that Saturday meeting, things didn't explode like some courtroom drama on television. No one flipped the table. Melissa didn't cry. Danielle didn't apologize. They sat there tight-jawed, exposed, but defiant. But the silence that followed wasn't victory for them. It was a warning shot, and Aaron wasn't done. "Now we build the rest." He told me on the porch the next morning. He sat beside me with his laptop open, the glow of the screen casting sharp light across his determined young face. "They've underestimated the wrong woman." I sipped my coffee slowly. "Then, let's give them a reason to regret it." He smiled. Aaron started with the finances first. He requested a copy of Melissa and Daniel's joint credit card history. "They use one card for household expenses," he explained. "We'll see how often these dog meals show up." I raised an eyebrow. "How do you know they don't use cash?" He chuckled. "Melissa's too lazy to track cash. She wants points. Cash back, sure enough." Within 48 hours, he had the record's multiple purchases from Pet Supply Deluxe. Every 4 weeks, totaling hundreds of dollars. There were other things too. Spa days, subscription clothing boxes, organic wine deliveries, all under household. Meanwhile, the only grocery store receipts showed cheap staples, bread, rice, and a few vegetables. Barely anything with protein, nothing fresh. Aaron organized it into a spreadsheet, each line item tagged and categorized. He called it Neglect Ledger. Then came the next phase interviews. Aaron spoke to Marcy again. She agreed to give a formal affidavit, signed and notarized, testifying that the food I had been served was indeed not suitable for human consumption. She added a note from her prior nursing experience. Feeding non-nutritive animal food to an elderly person knowingly can result in gastrointestinal complications, malnutrition, and mental distress. We had that printed, signed, and filed. He also pulled footage from the corner pharmacy security camera the day I bought the rotisserie chicken. It showed me. Slim, gray-haired, hunched, slightly holding a small bag, smiling gently at the clerk. Proof that I had the mental capacity to purchase, choose, and prepare my own food. "She's not senile," Aaron wrote in the packet summary. "She's suppressed next." He created a timeline. At the top of the page, 3 months of silence, 1 month of evidence, 1 day for justice. He plotted everything. The date I moved, in the first appearance of the dog food order. Dates of bank transfers I made to help Daniel catch up on bills. Dates. I supposedly forgot things, but really logged them in my hidden notes. Aaron even highlighted Melissa's social media posts. "Look here," he said, pointing at a caption. Under a photo of her sipping a green smoothie in a robe, taking care of everyone but myself. Caregiver burnout. Do it all, wife? She's building a victim narrative, he said while feeding you leftovers from Lai's bowl. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm fury was louder than any scream. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. Melissa tried a few days later to strike up small talk. "Oh, Aaron's staying long," she asked over breakfast, her voice coated with that familiar fake sugar. I looked at her plainly. "Just long enough to clean house?" She blinked. "Oh, well, let me know if you need anything. I need you to remember who owns this house." She didn't speak to me again that day. Aaron called in a favor with a law school mentor who had clerked for a local judge. He wanted guidance on how far we could take this, whether this crossed into criminal abuse or stayed in the civil realm legally. The mentor said, "You've got enough for elder exploitation, especially if there's money involved, and there clearly is. Don't underestimate the weight of humiliation." Juries remember that by the end of the week, Aaron had compiled a binder. It was thick, labeled clearly Evelyn Harris versus Melissa and Daniel Harris. Documentation pack. He printed 3 copies. One for me, one for a legal advisor, and one he kept with him at all times. "I'm not filing anything yet." He said, "That's your call, but they need to know we can anytime." I nodded, so what's next? "Next," Aaron said, "we host a family dinner." I raised my eyebrows. "Another one?" He grinned. "This time you set the menu. It was Daniel's birthday." Melissa had planned it like a campaign, a carefully staged performance, streamers in silver and navy, a cake so polished it looked plastic, every chair perfectly arranged, the guest list tight, but significant siblings, cousins, family friends, a few coworkers from Daniel's office, enough people to witness a celebration or something else entirely. I wasn't asked to help, not that I would have. I was seated in the corner near the patio doors, not quite in the group, but not out of it. Either, a perfect place for the old mother, visible enough for photographs, quiet enough to ignore Melissa, floated around the room in a cream blouse, laughing too loudly. She kissed Daniel's cheek every 20 minutes, like she was refreshing an ad. And Daniel. He looked distracted, as if something inside him had started to slip and he couldn't name it. Then Aaron arrived. He didn't wear a suit, he didn't carry a briefcase, just a slim leather folder tucked under his arm and a small black projector in his hand. "Happy birthday, Uncle Daniel," he said. Hugging him quickly, Melissa stepped in all sparkle and teeth. "Aaron's so glad you could make it. Are you staying long?" Aaron smiled. "Just long enough to clear something up." She blinked clear. "What up?" He didn't answer. 30 minutes later, after the cake had been cut and everyone was still holding their forks, Aaron stood. He walked to the center of the room, turned toward the group, and cleared his throat. "I'd like to ask everyone for 5 minutes. He said, voice calm and steady. "Just a short family moment. Something important, something overdue." Melissa stiffened beside the drink cart. Daniel looked up. "Aaron." Aaron held up a hand gently. "Just a few minutes, Uncle. I promise." Daniel nodded. "All right." Aaron turned, plugged in the projector to the nearby wall outlet, and let the machine hum to life. The lights dimmed slightly, just enough to let the screen glow against the pale wall, and then he said it. "Con muanchia moat." The first slide came up, Pet Supply Deluxe. Order confirmation." The gasps were audible. "The muted dog, gourmet meals, bulk order, recurring subscription." Now, the air shifted. Some laughter died. Some forks clinked against plates. Scan of the ingredient list in bold red, not for human consumption. Then a photo sitting at the dining table in front of the same bowl beside Lai's. The room fell completely still. "I've been working with my grandmother for the past month," Aaron said, turning to face. The guests collecting evidence documentation, witness statements, medical opinions, financial records, all pointing to one truth for weeks. Months. In fact, my grandmother was knowingly served pet food by Melissa Harris. He said her name slowly, carefully, like a verdict. Melissa stood up, face flushing crimson. "This is disgusting. This is a birthday party." Aaron didn't blink, so was the day she took the first photo of that barcode in the trash. The first night. She smelled something off in her stew. The first time she noticed that Li's meals looked more appetizing than hers, people began to murmur. "My daughter-in-law's sister," covered her mouth. A cousin whispered to Daniel, whose face had gone ashen. Erin continued undeterred. "I know what some of you may be thinking. It's not that serious. Maybe it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Here's the credit card statement. Monthly purchases from the same supplier over $2,000 worth of dog food ordered and served under the guise of organic meals. Meanwhile, the only groceries bought were enough for 2 adults. Click photos of their fridge, sparse lifeless. The fridge was locked some nights," Erin said quietly with a code only Melissa knew it. Click a signed letter from Marcy. Displayed proudly confirmed non-human grade food being consumed. Documented physical risk to a 78-year-old patient. Melissa stepped forward. "You're twisting things she eats. Whatever we eat, she's confused all the time." Erin held up one hand, then turned to me. "Grandma, have you ever been diagnosed with memory loss or dementia?" I stood slowly, met his eyes. "No, sweetheart." "Do you take care of your own finances?" "Yes." "Do you remember what you had for dinner 2 nights ago?" I smiled faintly. Frozen chicken patties, microwave corn. One bite of what was in my bowl. Then I flushed the rest, just like I did the night before and the night before that. A silence heavier than cement settled over the room. Melissa's hands balled into fists. "You're making her look like a victim. She's old. She forgets." Erin looked around the room. She didn't forget. She remembered everything. She pretended to forget to survive long enough to gather proof, because that's what strong women do when they're cornered. They wait and then they speak the last slide, a scanned property deed name. Evelyn Harris, owner, current and sole title holder of the house they were standing in. I stepped forward. "I was going to wait until next month," I said softly, "but now feels right." I pulled the keys from my pocket and set them on the coffee table. "I'm moving out. This house is going up for sale next week." Melissa gasped. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You're kicking us out," he finally whispered. "I'm letting you go," I corrected, "because I deserve peace. Not pity. Not poison." Erin turned off the projector. The light faded. The truth. No one clapped. No one cried. They just sat in the mess they made. I stood up. My knees weren't as quick as they used to be, but they held steady under the weight of 78 years. And a truth finally spoken aloud in my hand was a key one I had kept in my apron pocket since the day Melissa started locking the fridge at night. It had stayed warm against my hip like a promise. And now it was time to deliver. I took 2 steps forward, heels tapping gently against the tile. Daniel's birthday cake sat untouched. Frosting glossy candles. Unlit, Melissa's eyes followed my movements, sharp and narrow like a cat. Cornered Daniel stood behind her, pale, stunned into silence. I placed the key on the coffee table deliberately, clearly. Then I looked around the room at every face family who had once hugged me out of obligation, who had forgotten I had once carried them as babies cooked. For them, prayed for them, and I said the words I had been holding in my chest for far too long. "I'm leaving and I'm taking the house with me." The gasp came first from Melissa's sister. Then Erin stepped up beside me, holding the folder of documentation like a quiet flag of war already won. Melissa shook her head. You can't do that. This is Daniel's home, our home." I turned to her, calm, gentle, devastating. "It was never yours, sweetheart. It was mine the day Harold and I put our names on that deed, and after he died, it stayed mine. I just never felt the need to remind anyone until now." Daniel finally spoke, voice barely audible. "Mom, where will you go?" I looked at him. "My son, my only child." I had changed his diapers, rocked him through chicken pox, packed his lunch every day until college, and yet he had sat silent while his wife served his mother. Humiliation on a porcelain plate. "I'll go somewhere that doesn't smell like bleach and secrets," I said softly. "I'll go where the door isn't locked when I need a glass of water, where I can eat food meant for people, where silence isn't served," and nodded to me. "I already found her a place. Uncle 2-bedroom condo, gated community with a kitchen." "She'll love," Melissa barked out a laugh. "You're really doing this. You're going to abandon us after everything we've done for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything you've done to me? You mean?" She froze and then she snapped. "You think you're some kind of hero? You think people will care? You're just an old woman." Erin took one step forward. She's an old woman who owns this house, who paid your bills, who fed your husband and raised your son, and who has every legal document, every photo, every testimony she needs to make sure you don't forget that. Again, Melissa's mouth opened and then closed. There was nothing left to say. I turned back to Daniel. I wish you had spoken up, I said, quieter now. Even once his eyes welled, I didn't know how. You knew enough to be ashamed, I said. That was enough to act. You chose not to. The guests began to rise, some awkwardly excusing themselves, some offering tight hugs and murmured apologies. But I didn't linger. I had packed a small bag. Just the essentials. I left everything else, pictures, furniture, memories, let them collect dust in the rooms where laughter used to live. Aaron walked me to his car as we reached the door. I heard Melissa's voice behind us. Not yelling now, desperate, please. And she said, you can't really kick us out. Daniel has nowhere else to go. We have bills. The market's awful. I didn't turn around. I didn't kick you out. I said, you walked yourselves out the moment you forgot who built the floor beneath you. Aaron opened the door. I eased into the passenger seat before he started the engine. I looked up at the house one last time, the curtains drawn, the porch lights flickering slightly. A home that had once held joy now. Just walls. I exhaled. I don't need revenge, I whispered. Aaron smiled as he shifted into drive. You already got it. The drive to Chloe's place was quiet. Aaron let the radio play softly, something classical, nothing with words. I watched the cornfield slip by outside the window, endless rows of green stretching into the gold of a setting sun. Indiana in the summer still had that small town charm, no matter how much the people inside the homes changed. My bag sat at my feet. Not very full at 78, I had learned to travel light. It's not what you carry. On your back, that matters. It's what you carry in your heart. We pulled into the driveway of a small white cottage with blue shutters and a porch swing. The lawn was overgrown in that soft way that meant someone lived here. With dreams, not deadlines, wind chimes rang in the evening breeze. Chloe was waiting at the door the moment she saw me. She ran down the steps, barefoot, arms open, tears already in her eyes. Oh, Grandma, she hugged me so tightly. I nearly lost my breath, but it was the kind of breath you don't mind losing. She pulled back, wiped at her cheeks, and led me inside. The house smelled like vanilla and basil. She'd been baking photos of her college graduation. Her cat, Tofu, and a framed picture of the two of us from years ago sat neatly along a shelf by the window. No marble countertops, no designer decor, but every inch of it was warm. Oh! She made tea. I sat at her kitchen table. The wood scratched from years of use. She placed a mug in front of me. Peppermint, my favorite. Then she sat across from me, folded her hands and looked at me with the kind of guilt only good people carry. Grandma, she began, voice trembling. I didn't know it was this bad. I smiled gently. Melissa made sure of that. Chloe bit her lip. I knew she wasn't good, but I thought you were okay. You were always strong. You were always smiling. I reached over, placed my hand over hers. Smiling. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It just means you know the pain isn't where it ends. She burst into tears. I'm sorry, she choked. You deserved a better life. You sacrificed your whole life. I was too weak. I couldn't fully protect you. I squeezed her hand. Chloe. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. I hear you now, Grandma, she said softly. I hear everything loud and clear. We sat there in silence for a while, just breathing together. It wasn't the kind of silence that hurts. It was the kind that heals later that evening. She showed me my room. The sheets were fresh and tucked tight. A small bookshelf held gardening magazines by the window. There was a basket of yarn and knitting needles. Nothing fancy, but everything was placed with care. Not expensive, just full of heart. You really made all this for me. Yum? I asked. She nodded. I started getting it ready the moment I found out what was happening. You're safe here now, I promise. And I believed her. That night, I stood by the window and looked out at the quiet street. There were no footsteps pacing outside my door, no locks on the refrigerator, no hushed voices plodding behind thin walls, just the sound of wind in the trees and the gentle ringing of wind chimes. I picked up my journal, my real one this time, not the digital file, hidden on my phone, and began to write June 16th. I left the house I built with Harold up. The shame they tried to feed me. I left, but I didn't lose. They lost the right to say my name without flinching. Later, Chloe peeked in before going to bed. "Need anything, Grandma?" I shook my head. "Just this." She walked over, knelt beside my chair, and rested her head gently on my lap, just like she used to when she was 5 and couldn't sleep without my humming. "You're not losing your mind," she whispered. I smiled and stroked her hair. "No, sweetheart. I never was. I was just waiting for the right moment to remember everything for them." 3 weeks later, I received a letter from Daniel. No return address, handwritten. "Well, I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve that. I let Melissa take too much control. I let fear turn me quiet. You raised me better. I know that now. Aaron showed me the evidence. Everything you kept track of, everything you lived through. I'm ashamed, but I'm also proud of you, and I'm sorry." I folded the letter and slipped it into the back of my journal. I never wrote him back. Some apologies are best answered with silence. As for Melissa, Erin told me she moved out 2 weeks after I left. Quietly, no big post online, no motivational quotes, just a sudden absence from their lives. She filed for a temporary separation, packed her bags, left, Daniel standing in the silence he helped create. And sometimes silence is the loudest. Justice of all, these days I spend my mornings walking to the farmer's market with Chloe. I help her tend to her little garden, even if my knees don't always agree. I cook again. Real food meals with soul meals, with onions that sting and garlic that clings to your fingers and flavor that lingers like memory. We laugh often. Not because life is perfect, but because I finally feel like I'm exactly where I belong in a home that remembers me with people who listen and with a truth that no longer needs to be hidden. So if you've made it to the end of my story, thank you. If something inside you stirred, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone you lost, or maybe even a part of yourself, subscribe to. Because the stories we tell here, they come from the women who were silenced too long. We speak now, not for pity, but for clarity, for justice, and for every grandmother who waited a lifetime to finally be heard. When a grandma speaks, the world finally listens.